The following was recorded on June 23rd, 2025. Please keep in mind laws, guidelines, and processes may change over time. This is the Italian Citizenship Podcast, hosted by Marco Permunian and Rafael Di Furia. Hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Italian Citizenship Podcast, presented by Italiancitizenshipassistance.com. Of course, we are back at it again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian, and I am Rafael Di Furia. And in this episode, we wanted to talk about a Circolare, a governmental memo that has been put out recently, which is roughly an operational guide for the registration of a minor child born abroad who would be eligible for Italian citizenship. This is a clarification under the new rules that have been put in place since the end of May, as well as the end of March. But Marco, can you tell us a little bit more about this Circolare and what it actually says?
Circolare 59 of 2025, released on June the 17th of 2025, provides operational instructions on how to register birth certificates of minor children and how it's possible for minor children to get Italian citizenship through the registration of their birth certificates. It also provides instructions on how to make the self-declaration for those who want to reacquire their Italian citizenship, those who lost it through naturalization in a foreign country and want to reacquire it. As we said in other episodes, with the citizenship reform, it was established that those who lost their Italian citizenship can now reacquire it by making a self-declaration between July the 1st of this year and December the 31st of 2027. But going back to the minors, the Circolare provides 3 application forms that can be used by parents, by the Italian parents of a minor child, to request the registration of their child's birth certificate. Now, the Circolare also indicates that the acquisition of citizenship occurs when all of the conditions that are listed in the Circolare are met, and not from the birth of the child, meaning that the child will become an Italian citizen from the day in which the conditions, meaning the self-declaration and potentially the residency in Italy, occur, and not retroactively from the birth of the child. So this is a very important shift from the past, because in the past, the child would have acquired Italian citizenship at the time of the birth and not at a later time. So now, in order for a minor child of an Italian citizen to acquire Italian citizenship, it is necessary for the Italian parent to, like I mentioned, make a self-declaration before the child turned 1 year old. Or if the child is over the age of 1, it is necessary for the child to become an Italian citizen to not only request a registration and make the self-declaration that is indicated in the Circolare, but also for the child to reside in Italy for a period of 2 years together with their parent, their Italian parent, and the 2 years need to be consecutive, so without interruptions. There's also a third scenario where it's possible for a parent to make a self-declaration in order for the child to acquire Italian citizenship, regardless of the age of the child, as long as, of course, the child is a minor. And that is possible only up until May the 31st of 2026, and only for those individuals who were minors at the time in which the Italian decree was converted into law, so May the 23rd. So in short, according to the Italian decree and the law that converted the Italian decree into law, there are 3 ways for a minor to become an Italian citizen. It's possible to request the registration of their birth certificate through the Italian consulate up until when the minor becomes 1 year of age. And it's necessary that the parent makes a self-declaration, which needs to be submitted at the Italian consulate. Of course, if the family is residing in Italy, such a declaration can also be made to an Italian comune, and more precisely, the comune in which the Italian parent and the child reside. It's possible to request a registration of a birth certificate of a minor child who is over the age of 1, but at that point it's necessary for the minor and the Italian parent to reside in Italy for a period of 2 consecutive years. And in that case, the self-declaration needs to be filed first, either at the consulate or at the Italian municipality. And then the minor and the parent need to reside in Italy for the 2 years that are required by the law. There's also a third option, which is valid only until May the 31st of next year, which allows Italian parents to request the registration of their children, regardless of their age, as long as they're minors, as of May the 23rd of 2025. And in that case, it's not necessary to reside in Italy. In all of these scenarios, the minor child acquires Italian citizenship at the time in which all of these conditions are met, and not retroactively at the time of their birth.
Well, Marco, thank you so much for getting into these details. And I've got a few questions for you. Let's start out with some of the ones that have a little bit more to do with procedure, and then there's some more that have to do with maybe the legality of it that I would like to ask you about. Within the Circolare, it mentions about conditions being met, and from that point, that the child would then be considered a citizen. What are those conditions that have to be met?
The conditions would be making the self-declaration, which needs to be filed by the Italian parent on behalf of the child, the request for the registration of the birth certificate, and when required, the 2 years of residency in Italy.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. And so once the declaration has been made and the birth registration has been completed, is it then just, quote unquote, the normal process to go about requesting a passport as long as the child is either under 1 year of age, or that it's done by May 31st of 2026? Is that roughly what we're talking about here as well?
Of course, once the conditions that are required by the law have been met, meaning that the parent has submitted the self-declaration and the birth registration has been completed, it's possible for the parent to request a passport on behalf of their minor child by using the old procedure. So the procedure to request a passport for the minor child has not changed. And of course, once the minor child has acquired the Italian citizenship, it's also possible for that individual, once they have become an adult, to request a passport for themselves as adults. And the procedure, again, is the same as it was before.
Interesting. And so taking things back, though, to the declaration itself, I want to ask you about, what does that declaration look like? Is it a complicated document? Do you have to draft a formal letter? Is it in English? Is it in Italian? In what form does the declaration actually come in?
The Circolare provided a template of such self-declarations, which can be used when the individual is residing in Italy, because the Circolare primarily takes into consideration the scenario of somebody who is residing in Italy. And in fact, the declarations that are included in the Circolare are directed at the clerks at the municipality. Now, the websites of the consulates are slowly updating their information as well, and they are publishing on their websites these declarations that need to be filed at an Italian consulate. And since the Circolare does say that these declarations need to be filed in person, it will be possible, even for those who file these declarations at the consulate, to have the clerk certify the signature of the person who is submitting such declaration. Of course, these self-declarations need to be accompanied by documentary evidence regarding the citizenship of the parent, the identity of the parent and the child. So there will be likely a series of documents that need to be filed together with the declaration. Probably among these documents, and this will be probably clarified by the consulates themselves, there will be the birth certificate of the child, the passport of the parent, and potentially additional evidence that the parent is an Italian citizen, including probably the registration with the AIRE, and of course the documentation that confirms the identity of the child. The self-declaration is for now exclusively in Italian, and it's possible that the consulates will publish a version in English that can be used by individuals who reside abroad.
Well, just before getting into questions about the legality of this, one final question about the process itself. In what ways can ICA be there to be able to help individuals along with this process?
Of course, with how things are going, it looks like even simple registration processes like this one need to be accompanied by a series of documents, which most likely will need to be legalized and translated. I'm thinking, for example, of the birth certificate of the minor child, which in order to be registered in Italy will need to be apostilled and translated. And the translation will probably need to be certified either by the consulate or by an approved professional like an official translator. So we at ICA, of course, we can help with all of those things, including the preparation of the form, as well as we can help with the process as a whole, because like we said, it looks like it's a simple self-declaration, but in reality, we are all realizing that, as usual, things are more complicated than they look like.
Yes, it's been quite upsetting for many to see how complicated things seem to be at this moment in time and what's changed and how it's changed. Of course, there are questions about legality, constitutionality that come along with the discussions around the Tajani decree and the subsequent changes. But this leads me into my next set of questions here. Effectively, doesn't this mean that Jure Sanguinis is technically no longer the way in which an Italian citizen would acquire citizenship, at least for those who are born into a family that would be of Italian descent if they're born abroad?
Well, it seems like the government keeps trying to clarify that the Jure Sanguinis principle, meaning the principle that regulates the transfer of citizenship within one individual and another, so between a parent and a child, is still in place, and that the spirit of the whole reform is to confirm that the Jure Sanguinis principle is still the main principle that regulates the transfer of citizenship in Italy between one generation and the other, and that simply they put limits to the ability to transfer citizenship. But in reality, we and a lot of other professionals are realizing that maybe we are slowly moving in the direction of something different, which is no longer Jure Sanguinis, as evidenced by the fact that, like we just said, minor children will no longer be considered children at birth and will be no longer receiving citizenship Jure Sanguinis, but the law will allow them to be able to request that they obtain citizenship from a moment which is after their birth, and only if certain conditions are met.
So then what is this? Is this only for children who are born only as Italian citizens, or is this for children who would also naturally be born with the citizenship of another nation as well?
The rules that we just talked about apply to minor children of Italian citizens who were born abroad, so outside of Italy, and with another citizenship. And so if some of these conditions don't apply, these rules may not apply.
Very interesting. But then wouldn't this almost in a way seem to create a situation where there are two types of citizenships or different tiers of citizenship, or that those who hold another citizenship face a certain level of discrimination within the Italian system?
Unfortunately, that is the whole problem, that all of these new rules, including the rules for minors that we have talked about, do create, in our opinion and in the opinion of many other professionals, two types of citizenship and two categories of individuals where it could make a difference if you are born in Italy rather than abroad. So you are luckier if you were born in Italy, so to speak, and you got unlucky if you were born abroad. So these, among many other things, does create doubts regarding the constitutionality of the whole reform and about the fairness and compliance with the Constitution of many of these provisions that we saw recently.
So then, Marco, if there would be these two different tiers of citizenship theoretically, or some form of discrimination in a very hypothetical situation, what would things potentially look like? I mean, are we talking about that there would be a whole new route for court cases that will open up for children that are technically being discriminated against, or challenges that are going to be made? I mean, is there room for the laws to change yet again? What do you think we might be facing going forward?
Of course, during the episode, we have been talking about the rules as they are, but that doesn't mean that they should exist. So there is no doubt that these provisions, especially the ones regarding minors, but not only those, are discriminatory and unfair and unjust. And this whole reform should have been done better. And we at ICA believe that there is room to challenge these provisions. And we're actively preparing, together with our clients, to prepare court cases that will challenge some of these provisions. But for sure, those regarding minors are discriminatory, to say the least.
Well, Marco, this is all very interesting, and this has been a fascinating episode. Thank you so much for making yourself available to discuss this topic and to fill us in on what's happening with this Circolare. But of course, if anybody needs to get in contact with you for help through all of this, how can they get in contact with you and your team?
People can contact us through our website, ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com, or send us an email at info@ItalianCitizenshipassistance.com.
Well, thank you again. Of course, for those of you who are watching or listening in, be sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel as well as the audio-only podcast. But of course, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, that does mean you're also automatically subscribed to Ask the Italian Lawyer, as well as the Italian Citizenship Podcast. Of course, we are focusing currently on Italian citizenship with all of the changes and everything going on. So as soon as things become a little bit more normalized, we will be returning to episodes of the Italian Real Estate Podcast. Also, if you're interested in more about life abroad and living abroad from the perspective of a dual citizen expat, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael Di Furia, or you can search for Not Your Average Globetrotter on YouTube or your favorite podcasting platform. But of course, again, we have been here with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. I'm Rafael Di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you.